You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Ankit Kapoor, partner and trial lawyer at Cohen, Stine, Kapoor, LLP, focusing on matrimonial and family law in New York City. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Yeah, no, it's great to see you. We got to hang out in New York City a couple times this summer, which was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming out to those events. Lawyer Stories really appreciates it.
Oh, that was a great time out on the boat, then out on the rooftop. Made some
Yeah,
good friends. I met a couple of good people because of you. I mean, what you're doing is fantastic.
thank you so much. Yeah, and we hope to continue it. I love New York City, and it's been a lot of fun, man. And like we've known each other for a little while. We finally got to meet. I think it was June 6th in Brooklyn, and then we saw each other again in August, early August. But that's because you were episode 30 of our podcast, and we have now dropped, I think, 152 episodes. So this was like 2 years ago. And I should add, I didn't scroll all the way through, but you were definitely one of the first ones featured like before the podcast 2 years ago. So it's been a while, man. And I think you were kind of like a fresh attorney. You were. Um, I kind of want to revisit the story because I think it's like a phenomenal way to start the
Okay.
podcast. Like you being a New York City police officer, that's pretty incredible. So you were there for like maybe 6 or 8 years.
I was there for 7 years, and
7 years.
I remember the first time your organization featured me. I was an intern.
Okay.
Uh, I was like a summer associate
Yeah.
somewhere, and at that time, or maybe I had graduated. I don't remember, but I don't think I was like a full-fledged lawyer. But yeah, I did 7 years in the NYPD. I was at Corporation Counsel, and then I went into private practice. Uh, then I made partner in 2021. And
Yeah.
I think when I first made partner is when we did the first podcast, episode 30.
Right.
But a completely different lawyer
Well, I
now.
remember like your lawyer story when we first featured you. It was like what I used to do. Like sometimes I do like half and half photos, and like one half of them was like you of a lawyer, and then half was like you in your New York Police Department uniform, and people loved it, man. Like they went nuts over that post. And like, what kind of a transition is that? Like, what were you saying to yourself? To go through all that training, the police academy. I don't know if that's just an '80s movie or something you actually had to go through in New York City. They're very well esteemed. I mean, we're actually recording this around September 11th, so we all know what they mean to our country. And you work for them. That's absolutely incredible. And then you sort of were like, okay, I want to make a pivot. Like, how did that come about?
I think I was in the second year as a cop, and I just I wanted to do something more.
Okay.
And I know I wanted like more out of life. I mean, I loved that job. It was, it was bittersweet leaving. I did
Yeah.
love that job. I think it's a great job. If I wasn't a lawyer, I would probably stay at that job. It was very rewarding. But I wanted to do more. And look, I'll be honest, I wanted to make more money.
Yeah.
There's no
Okay.
shame in that.
No.
People always, I wanted to make a difference, this and that. Yeah, I get it. But look,
Yeah.
you want to make money. There's nothing
Yep.
wrong with wanting to make money,
So
and
go ahead. Yep.
that's what I wanted to do.
Yep.
But I also knew that there was more that I wanted out of life.
Yeah, for sure. So, one might ask, like, how come not criminal defense? Like, you've seen how the laws are broken and you deal with that. Why not either go prosecute it or defend it? And I guess making money would be like maybe a defense attorney.
Yeah,
Um, how come did that ever cross your mind to do something like that rather than matrimonial?
it did initially, but it wasn't something I was drawn to. I know I wanted to always do matrimonial law because I would see a lot of divorces in my life. Not personally in my family,
Yep.
because I come from a traditional family where almost no one's divorced, maybe one person. Um, but I wanted to I, I was interested in relationships, interested in dynamics, a bit nosy, you can say, because I now I know everyone's dirty, all my clients' dirty laundry.
Interesting. Okay.
Uh, and uh, and I also knew I wanted to represent people who had a lot of money. Because look, from a business standpoint, you have to make sure that you can cover your overhead and
Yep.
you get paid, right? So you have to carefully choose who you want to represent. Someone did tell me many years ago, like they received advice in terms of what kind of lawyer you want to be, but they decided that by deciding what kind of client they want to represent. So
Oh,
that
that's
also
interesting.
went.
So they sort of they like maneuvered backwards a little bit.
Yeah, like, do you want to represent someone who's been accused of a crime? Do you want to represent a musician? Do you want to represent someone who's been injured? Do you want to represent someone who's the victim of medical malpractice, or or do you want to represent banks? Do you want to
Right.
do debt financing, or you want to develop? You want to represent real estate
Yeah.
developers? You want to be a real estate lawyer? These are
Right.
all questions I asked myself, and I ended up where I am partially was I got lucky in many ways, right place at the right time, but I
Right.
also worked hard.
That's super interesting, man. I don't even know if I ever put that like kind of operating reverse engineering, like who do I want to represent? Like what kind of people? So that's and you say you know all your clients' dirty laundry, but don't they only come to you with dirty laundry? I mean, that's like kind of the whole matrimonial thing. But what was tell us quickly about your law school experience? I know we've covered this a couple times, but what was it, what would you say about your law school experience?
Okay, so if I could go back and change something about law school, it would be nothing. I loved
Wow.
every aspect of it.
Really?
Uh,
Okay.
I would do it all over again, just the way I did it,
It's
because I
amazing.
got to work, I got to make a little bit of money, I got to make friends who also worked because I was in the part-time program, and I also was in classes with full-time students, so I got a mix of everything. And because I had a 3-year break between law school and graduation from college, I also brought a little bit of life experience to law school. I
Right,
wasn't
right.
right out of college, but law school was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
If people ask me like, "Oh, do you recommend law school?" I said, first decide whether you want to be a lawyer.
Mhm.
Do you like reading? Do you like writing? Do you like dealing with people? And do you like, on occasion, long hours, depending on the field you're in?
Right.
And I also say try working at a law firm for a year, right? Because law school is an
Yeah,
expensive
that's
investment.
great. I think that's great advice. It really is. I mean, a lot of people go right from law school. I mean, right from undergrad, and I just think it's it is good. Hindsight's 20. Is it 2020? Is that what it is? But I think like having learning like a schedule and that sort of thing is always helpful.
Yeah, or in college or after college, intern if you can. Not everyone has the opportunity to do that. If you can intern and maybe go to a law firm that practices a few different areas, so you can get different exposures and see what you like most and whether you want to be a lawyer. It's not for everyone, man. It really is not.
Yeah.
And I think I come across a lot of unhappy lawyers, and
Mhm.
I like to think they're unhappy because they're just in the wrong practice area. I
Right.
think the law is vast enough where there's something for everyone that they
Right.
can enjoy, right?
I
You just
think
have to
that's good
find it.
advice. So who would you tell that to? Like what advice would you give a law student, who is a rising 3L and like maybe he didn't get like these on-campus interview offers and has sort of had like weird experience. Like what advice would you give a rising 3L and going into the workplace?
I would say don't worry about your salary right out of law school. It
Yeah.
almost doesn't matter. You're going to have friends who are going to go into big law, and they're going to make $200,000 a year at age 25 plus bonus, and you're going to be jealous. And it's okay, it's fine. Instead of focusing on that, focus on the type of law you want to practice. And again, try to work at a firm that has a couple of different practice areas. Maybe you want to do litigation. You don't know what kind of litigation. Go to a firm that does commercial and real estate, maybe some personal injury, see what you like. You may discover you don't want to do litigation. And I
Yeah.
gotta say, litigation is not for everyone.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a tough
No,
hour.
totally. But you were, it's interesting because when we were hanging out in New York, litigation's for you. You were like, I love being a trial lawyer. You were like, you should see me in court. Like I'm a killer. I think you were saying that. You're like, or maybe you were like, I love it. Like I love going into court. So like, what about being a trial lawyer do you like the most?
So I didn't say that I'm a killer. What I said was I was described as a killer.
Just right. Okay.
Because I remember I was arguing, and when my court appearance ended, I left the counsel table, and someone approached me who was looking to hire an attorney, and that's what they saw me argue. Maybe I was just having a good day. Look, it happens, right? Maybe I was just having a good day. That's what that person saw, that potential client, and he approached me. That's how he described me. Um, but look, there's transactional attorneys, there are litigators, and then there's trial lawyers.
Right.
Not everyone can be a trial lawyer. Not everyone can be a transaction attorney. I don't think I can sit at my desk all day and worry about different deal points and commas and semicolons and whatever. That's not for me,
Right.
right?
Right.
I know transaction law is way more complex than what the way I described it, and I don't mean to belittle it at all. But I like being a trial attorney. I think that's my bread and butter. That doesn't mean I don't know how to settle a case. I settle a case when it can be settled, but I'm not afraid to try a case. Uh, One of the advantages of matrimonial law is that there are no juries. So I've done jury trials before. I know how to pick a jury. I know how to do jury instructions and all that. But matrimonial trials are bench trials. The judge is the jury, and it's a different dynamic in the courtroom. Uh,
Right.
and for reasons that should be obvious to most people, you can't have a jury in a matrimonial trial.
Yeah. No, that's like a good point. I mean, most people, maybe some people don't really realize that or don't think about it. So tell
Yeah.
us, Ankit, like who are your clients? And what are they usually going through when they come see you? They're like, hey, that you get a phone call, I need your services. So who are these people approaching you for your representation?
Okay, so my primary two categories, custody or finances, right? Every
Right.
divorce, if there are children and they're under the age of 18, custody could be an issue. So I deal with custody cases, and then depending on how long the marriage is, what's accumulated, then I have financial issues. If I represent a real estate developer who is married to someone for 20 years, and when they got married they had $100,000, and now they have $50 million.
Mhm.
I got to figure out what I'm doing with this 50 million and how it's getting divided. And then
Right.
on the custody front, we have to decide who's getting decision making, who's getting residential custody, who's paying child support, who's paying for things like soccer and private school and college.
Wow.
So that's like a typical divorce case. And obviously with custody, you don't have to be married. It could just be a custody case. And then you have your other cases like the post-nuptial agreements, the prenup agreements, the occasional surrogacy agreements,
Hmm.
same-sex issues. I represented someone
Okay.
down in Miami. It was that was a very complex case, lots of money involved. So I mainly deal with very complex and sophisticated financial cases that I can't do on my own. I have to have a team on board. That involves having a trust and estates lawyer. Just had one today on a
Okay.
Zoom call. It involves having someone at my firm working on the case with me. Involves having a forensic accountant on the case.
Wow.
Maybe involves private investigators. Maybe involves my client's corporate attorney come onto the team. Maybe it involves their real estate lawyer to come into the team if we're trying to sell a marital asset in the middle of a divorce and there are certain restrictions around that. Our cases can be very complex. It's almost like you're dividing up a business, right? And I do have some cases that are not super high net worth.
Hmm.
Like for example, if I represented a couple of bankers, and they had modest salaries collectively, maybe just under $1 million. For New York City, it's kind of like the norm, right? In Manhattan, people are making almost hundreds of more, at least $300,000-400,000. A lot of the people, at least that I represent. So it varies, but I would say the majority of my work is complex, sophisticated financial divorces and then custody.
That's unbelievable. Like that is so interesting. Like how do you know when you have to get these other people involved though? Like at what point do you say, okay, like I need a real estate attorney. Okay, like I need the estate planning person. I need my forensic accountant. Like how
Mhm.
do you like do you like look at all these documents and you're like, I need to call upon this person, this person, this person? How does that work?
Well, if someone comes to me and I'm having a consult and they say, for Susie we have this trust, and for Mike we have this other trust. My next question is, when was it created and who created it and how much money are we talking here?
Okay.
And then what are the trust terms? And oftentimes I get, I don't know. Um, my father, or like the grandparent created it, and I'm like, who's your T&E lawyer? I need to talk to them. And that's how I call them to verify certain things,
Mm,
because even working a lot with trust and estates lawyers, I've increased my knowledge about that area. I mean, you have these generation skipping trusts, you have these clats, I can go on and on, that can get very complex in these type of cases. So you just have to know that, look, you can't do it alone. You need a team, you need help. And if the client can afford it, you try to get all the help that you can.
and they're okay with that. They're not like, hey, you should be able to do this all by yourself. They're sort of like, oh yeah, you're gonna need to because it's obviously much bigger than somebody not making like a lot of money, I guess.
Right. Look, can I interpret like a 20-page will or a
Yeah.
20-page trust agreement? Sure. But there are times I have a 90-page trust agreement with 10 different beneficiaries, and then there are contingent beneficiaries, there's remainder beneficiaries,
Yep.
and it leaves my head spinning. I said, it's just easier. I can spend 600, 700 an hour that I charge my client looking at this trust agreement for hours, or I can pick up the phone, call their T&E lawyer, and ask them, can you just give me the summary, the bottom line as to what I'm dealing with? And usually good attorneys have cheat sheets. I
Yeah.
have cheat sheets in my cases,
Sure.
right? So T&E lawyers often have cheat sheets. They'll have flow charts of, this is the holding company, this is the subsidiary, this is the limited partnership, that's the general partnership. And they'll share the flow chart with me. And by looking at the chart, it happened today, Ben. I looked
Yeah.
at the chart, I knew the whole family estate.
Okay.
That's how. And I have several cases where I have T&E lawyers involved. It's not just one or two clients. If I have 15 clients, I would say I have 7 or 8 uh, lawyers on those, 7 or 8 trust and state lawyers on those cases.
Wow, that's really
Yeah.
interesting. Like the crossover between those things. So what would you do like differently going, what do you want to do differently going forward? Is there something like that you would change or um
Differently. I don't know about differently. So I invest in real estate as well.
yep.
I'd like to invest in more real estate. Uh,
Okay.
that would be something different. I haven't been able to invest in a couple of years.
What kind of real estate? Like what do you like to look at?
Rentals.
Okay.
I'm not a flipper. I have a couple of close friends that are my partners, and we look for residential properties to rent.
Where?
We've stuck with New York because that's
New
what
York.
that's what we know. Um, and that's something I like to do more of. And for the time being, I enjoy what I'm doing. Maybe there'll
That's
be a
awesome.
day where I grow out of it and I say to myself, I want to do something different.
I don't know, man. I think you sound pretty good with what you're doing. You can definitely, I feel like you have a passion. I feel like you speak very fluently about what you're doing. And I guess I'll jump to like over a few questions and saying, regarding speaking fluently, you put out some really good LinkedIn content. Like I want to highlight that and hopefully people listening go check out Ankit Kapoor on LinkedIn. You have like really good articles about matrimonial law. Um, and actually, you recently posted an article about being featured in New York Weekly. I think that
Yeah.
was like very recent. Can you tell us a little bit about that article and like what that means to you to be featured in that publication?
I mean, it's not something I ever thought would happen.
Yeah.
You know, I get approached from time to time for interviews, but on that one, I was featured as part of my firm. I actually didn't give an interview, so I learned after the fact that, oh, my name, I
Oh,
had
okay.
actually, I had Googled myself when I came back from Italy, and one of
You
my
Google.
relatives,
So why does, I mean, I do it sometimes too, but like, why do we Google ourselves? Like, just to see.
I'll tell you why. I
Okay.
had a law school professor who is a New York State Supreme Court judge. And
Okay.
he always said, he's like, just Google yourself once a month. You never know what you may find.
Okay. All
So
right.
that's what I did. And that's what
Yeah.
I found. I was like, what is this? And
Yeah.
it was an article from actually like 2, 3 weeks ago. I was like, I wish
Yeah.
my PR people told me that I'm in this. Because
Yeah.
we have PR people and I have an office manager. And these things fall through the cracks. It happens. I was away, maybe that's why it happened. But I was like, oh, this is a very nice article. I ought to share this. And LinkedIn, I share posts because it's kind of a way for me to blog, things that
Yeah.
I learned, things that I find interesting, things that day-to-day people can apply. And of course, no one's going to comment and say, oh, I'm going to call you or I'm going to email you, right? It's like what I do is very personal.
Hmm.
No one, my clients don't know the identities of other clients, right?
Right.
And many of my clients are well-known people in New York City, and some are very well known across the United
That's
States.
amazing.
So I would never,
Can we get one of them to like the next Lawyer Stories Connect event? What?
maybe after his case is over, maybe then.
That's
But
cool.
anonymity is very important in my line
Sure.
of work.
Yeah. Of course.
So, but at the end of the day, what I was going at was, you'd be surprised how many people reach out to me after they see something on LinkedIn, and then they say, you know what, you were recommended to me by Ben, and I'll talk to the potential client, and later I'll shoot you a text, Ben, say thanks, Ben, thanks for the recommendation,
Okay.
and then like you may say, dude, listen, I saw your LinkedIn post, and you're the first person I thought of when this person asked me, you do have a recommendation for a divorce attorney. So it's
Sure.
getting into people's heads as the first name that pops in their head
Yeah.
when they think, oh, matrimonial lawyer. And look,
And
there's
it's
plenty
also
of
very
divorces being
valuable
filed.
too. Like what you're writing is like very valuable. Like, reading that stuff that you put out there is very good. But yeah, totally. That's what content's all about, LinkedIn and getting out there, having people think of the first matrimonial lawyer in New York would be Ankit. Like, let's send it over to Ankit, see if he could help us out. So what's like the best way, would you say, to generate new business?
That's my that's what I work on the most, other than actually a trial. You got to join different organizations, especially if you're in a place like New York City. There's
Right.
so many people. There are clients everywhere. They just don't know who you
Are
are.
there clients or attorneys everywhere? Which one? Both?
That too. I
Yeah.
mean, there are attorneys everywhere, but there are potential clients everywhere. If people don't know you, they can't buy from you.
Right.
So, right. So I'm a member of a few organizations. I'm also a member of the Classic Car Club of Manhattan, where
Okay.
it's like a great venue out on the West Side. And I've taken clients there. I've taken other attorneys there. Um, Getting to know, as a lawyer, if you want business, you have to develop a network of other attorney friends.
Okay, so that's big right there. I'm going to give a plug right now for Lawyer Stories Connect, since you just said that. That's what I want to do. We're connecting lawyers and lawyers, and it's amazing, and I love doing it. Okay, you go ahead.
No, what you're doing is great. Uh, Most of my referrals come from other attorneys. T&E lawyers,
Yep.
corporate lawyers, real estate lawyers,
Yep.
and if I don't join these organizations and meet people, I'm not going to be able to get the business. So this involves, you meet someone at an organization and say, Ed, let's go out for a drink sometime, or oh, financial advisor is another good source of business. I'm
Right.
taking my buddy Mike out to the car club next month after my trial schedule lightens up a bit.
Sure.
And like he sent me a client before, I'm sure he'll send me another client. So I try to, for my line of work specifically, I try to uh, be near people who are representing other people with a lot of money,
Yep.
whether it be financial advisors, real estate brokers, real estate developers, real estate attorneys, and other, especially trust and estates lawyers. Those guys are great. They
Yeah,
really.
yeah. Are you just licensed in New York or Jersey or which one?
I'm just licensed in New York, but I took the UBE, so I
Okay.
can be licensed in like 40 different states,
Okay.
including Jersey. I
Yeah.
just don't do it because, truthfully, Ben, I very rarely litigate outside of Manhattan.
Well, the only reason I asked is because you mentioned representing somebody in Miami, so I wasn't sure if you like, and I know Miami doesn't have like reciprocity yet.
Yeah.
Because I waved into a couple states after I passed the bar, in Connecticut, and then I waved into like Mass and Maine. So I didn't know if like if you had taken the Florida bar or whatnot.
I am not licensed in Florida.
Yeah,
When I had that one Florida case, I co-counsel with a lawyer in Florida.
gotcha. Okay,
And I got the client through a close like through a close connection. There's actually an immigration attorney that I
okay,
knew. So the attorneys are the best sources. And like I said, I'm part of a few organizations. My firm is and you really have to just go out and be willing to have a drink with someone, have break bread with them,
yep.
and just make good
I,
relationships and
that,
genuine, like, right, like I don't go out with someone just because I think they can get me business. I also want to know whether I'm gonna have a good time having a drink with this person.
yeah, you don't want to waste your time. I mean, time's so precious
Right.
these days that like you don't want to waste your time like going to have a meal with somebody that you don't, if anything else, you make a friend, right? I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, so like what's the most common maybe your family court in Manhattan like is different than what I've always heard about family courts.
Mhm.
Like what was like the most common thing you see there? Like is it crazy in family court or like what like is it mostly people arguing over, I guess it's all things. It's mostly people arguing over like custody or people arguing over like a bag of money or like what is like a very common thing that you've seen?
So I don't know how it is in other states, but in New York State, it's different. Matrimonial cases can only be litigated in the Supreme Court. And
Okay.
then you also have the family court, but you can't take a a divorce action in the family court. You
Okay.
can take post judgment of divorce stuff in family court. Um, the two courts are very different. The procedure in both courts are very different. Um, I try most of my cases, if not all of them, are in the Supreme Court because I have clients who want divorces, and the family court doesn't have jurisdiction to give you a divorce. Um, Family court, you often find people that are not married and have custody issues or child support issues. You'll find that, but people that are going through divorces, that's exclusively in the Supreme Court.
Okay, divorce is exclusively in the Supreme Court. So let me ask you this. So, excuse me, how do you think COVID impacted marriages? Like, did you see anything around the time of COVID, like an increased amount of divorces or people coming to you? Like, what's your take on that?
In the beginning, there was like a bit of an influx, but everyone asks me that question. Oh, COVID really must have increased your business. And my clients are of a different caliber, right? If if they're unhappy in their New York City 3,000 square foot apartment,
Yeah.
one of them will leave and go to the Hamptons home.
Yeah,
Or
okay. Fair enough.
or one of them will leave and go to the
Yeah.
home in West Palm, or one of them will go to their mansion in Aspen. It's just a different caliber of clients.
Yeah.
So yes, of course I got some clients because they were just sick of each other being in the same household.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that my practice grew because of COVID. I like to think my practice grows because of good work.
Well, I like not necessarily grow, maybe just like people like inquiring and like, I'm sick of this person. Like, but like you said, they have different outlets. And I guess that kind of leads back to my prior question about like, what do you see in like family courts? Cause I know you have like the higher, net worth people. And I don't know if there's a difference with those type of divorces, like how they treat each other versus like, just kind of average individuals.
Um, I have seen that the look, usually the less money there is in a case, the harder the case because every dollar becomes that much more important.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Rightfully so. Versus if you have $50 million, you know, is it that
And
big of
let her
a
have 27 million, you know?
Right. Is it
Yeah.
that big of a difference if one ends up with 27,
Yeah.
the other one does with 23 or 24, 26, that it has to
Yeah.
be 25 down the middle? It's not that much of a
That's
difference.
interesting. Okay.
If
That
you're
makes sense.
dividing up $500,000, the difference between one per doing it an even split 250, 250 and 350, 150, it's a lot of money when you're
Yeah.
talking in
Significant.
that
Yeah.
context. So the smaller the case, the harder it generally is for the attorney
Yep.
because everything becomes more important. And also, the hourly rate is the same, right? If you're coming to me and you have $1 million, you're getting charged the same amount of money as if someone who has 100 million coming to me. My hourly rate doesn't change because you have less assets. So
Right. Right.
when there's less money, I often encourage them, look, if we go to trial, you have a $500,000 in savings. If we go to trial, you're going to spend 250 of that, right?
Yep.
So what's the point? Let's figure out a deal here.
Yep.
And I encourage settlement in those cases, and I often do settle in
Did
those
you
cases.
ever did you ever see that meme about the people like trying to like split up the Beanie Babies or something like the beanie?
Yeah.
All right.
There's so many memes about that,
Oh, all right. So anyway, back to what you were just saying about actually this perfect leads into my next question about mediation. Like, do you even with high net worth people, like, are you trying to get people to reconcile, or are they the people come to you and like, okay, like I need you to be my shark, like I want to, take him for all he's worth or whatnot.
So people often come to me because they've heard about me and they're like, you have to be the shark. And uh, when someone comes to me for a divorce, I'm not completely convinced that they're ready for a divorce, right?
Okay.
I
Okay.
have to first hear this story. I'll ask them, have you gone to therapy? Have you gone to couples therapy? What about your partner? What work have they done? Tell me about how long has a certain conduct been going on. Um,
Okay.
do you understand the repercussions of a divorce and the impact on the children? If their children are involved. And there, a couple of times, I almost I guess I talked the client out of a divorce to
Okay.
my detriment, but what they decided to do instead was a postnuptial agreement,
Okay.
right?
Tell us what that is.
A postnup is a prenup, but is post marriage. That's why it's called a postnup. Uh, Postnup, it pretty much decides what's going to happen if we get divorced. And people will come for postnups if there's something that happened during the marriage, such as infidelity, and they're not ready to leave, or they want to leave and their partner wants them to stay, and then the client that I'm representing will say, well, then I want a postnuptial agreement because if we get divorced, I want security as to what's going to happen. Or sometimes they have a plan that, look, I think I'll divorce her or him in the future, but we got kids in junior high or we got kids in elementary school. Another 6 years when they go off to college, I'll worry about it then.
Mm.
But I do want to have that security. So a postnuptial agreement provides for security, and you can contract to certain things in a postnup that you cannot contract to in a prenup,
Oh, that's interesting. Okay,
like child support.
have you written about that on LinkedIn yet or no?
I have not, but maybe that'll be my
I
next
think
stop.
I think that would be very interesting actually. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, people try to contract the whole kind of thing, all kinds of things in a prenup, like child support, custody. It's
Okay.
completely unenforceable in court.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you put in a, or even if you put in a prenup that I'm keeping the dog, right? And you turn out to be an animal abuser. Just because you have that in a contract
Doesn't
doesn't mean it's going to be enforceable in court. Just
right.
like with kids, you contract to in a prenup or a postnup, you can get away with it way more in a postnup. That I'm going to have primary residential custody, but now you're running a meth lab out of your residence. You're
Yeah,
not going to get custody.
not
That
happening.
part of that postnup or prenup is not going to work, and it's certainly not going to work in a prenup most of the time.
Yeah.
But it varies.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting stuff. So speaking of LinkedIn, I saw one of your posts that you do a lifestyle analysis. We kind of discussed that a little bit, but I'm just curious if there was something about like Kevin Costner that you wrote. I don't even, to be honest, remember. But how do you conduct these? Like what takes place when you conduct a lifestyle analysis?
That's a question for an accountant because
Okay, all
I
right,
don't do the lifestyle analysis. I get a general idea what their expenses are, and
okay,
it's usually needed in cases where you have one of the spouse doesn't work and they need alimony, whether it's temporary or permanent. You know, there are cases where you're gonna have permanent alimony, although rare. And you have to figure out how much money they need. And how do you figure out how much money they need? You have to figure out their lifestyle.
right, right.
So that Kevin Costner post that I had, I think he was ordered to pay like 150,000 a month or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, it was that. Okay, and
But,
but she was getting less or something like that.
but that was, I think that was temporary child support.
Okay,
So child support is different than alimony. For child
right,
support, you don't need to do a lifestyle analysis. Child support is uh, housing, food, and clothing.
right.
And the number varies. It could be as little as $1,000 a month, or it could be as much as, like you saw, 100,000 a month
Crazy.
or more. I've had cases where, a lot of my cases, like I had a case where like child support was like 30,000 a month after,
Yeah.
like that's post-tax income that the recipient is getting, right?
Wow.
360,000 a year, cash, tax free.
It's amazing.
But it depends on the lifestyle. They may have an apartment that costs 20,000 a month. Now you only got 10,000 left over.
Right. Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
So Ankit, why should someone call you to be their matrimonial attorney?
Well, they want to kill her or not? No, I'm just kidding. Look, I try to do the best work that I can. I'm not shy about staying late in the office. I was working up until you and I started this interview. I have
Right.
to continue working after. And I'm surrounded by people at my firm who are far more experienced than I am. And anytime I have a question or something that I'm unsure of, I run it by them. And that's nothing to like, if you're like a new growing attorney, you have to have some sort of mentorship.
Of
Even if you're like
course.
a young
Yep.
partner, like I'm a young partner. So what if I'm a partner? I don't know everything,
Right.
right? So you have to be willing to ask for help. So I have all the help that I need. I have the resources that I need, and little creativity in cases goes a long way.
Yeah, for sure. And congratulations, you made it very quick to be a not only a partner but a name partner on the on the door there on the billboard. So that's incredible. So what are you doing when you're not working?
Well, exercising. I work out. I bike.
Okay.
Bike a lot. I actually biked about 40 miles this past weekend. That's in the summer, in the fall, and then in the winter. Last winter, I took on snowboarding as a new
Okay.
hobby and fell in love with it. So I went to
Nice.
Utah, went to Whistler, Vermont, obviously, because we live in the Northeast. It's just easy.
Yep, yep.
And this winter, I'm looking forward to more of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ankit, anything we left out today?
No, man, just thank you. I appreciate you doing this,
Yeah.
and hopefully your organization continues to grow. I was episode 30 and I'm going to be episode 150 something.
Yeah, yeah,
And
most
it's
likely.
great, how far you've come, and
Thank you.
have an event here in New York
Yeah, I
City.
want to do what we were part of a couple, and I want to do another one. Like maybe I'll do a birthday event there in December. No, but I think it would be great. I had an absolute blast hanging out with you and other people there. It was so much fun, and hopefully you'll be a member of Lawyer Stories Connect when we launch with like 10 to 15 people. Maybe you can be one of the inaugural members.
Oh, yeah,
I
sure.
could tell you more about that, but yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for taking the time. And yeah, stay right there. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves.